Hello and welcome back to the Drop Step podcast. We are fully into sort of off-season, I would say slop. I met Asher on a slop stream, the You Know Ball podcast, and the bromance is sort of spurned from there. We're in this sort of hiatus between the draft and proper summer league. So Asher, we've really got nothing to talk about. So we've squeezed our heads together and we've come up with this idea of just arguing for like an hour and a half. How are you feeling about that today, man? Do you think you're going to leave this in a little bit of a rage, or are we going to try and keep the vibes chill?
I think we'll be chill, but it is an Arsenal and a Liverpool fan, so we'll see where that goes. Yeah, might end up bantering about football by the end of it rather than basketball, depending on how much we argue. But, we'll see.
I've never had the chance to say this on a podcast, but my dad is an Everton fan as well. So it's like that rivalry runs even deeper.
Yeah.
And Liverpool just killed Arsenal for a decade straight before sort of like the last 2 years. So I just fully hate them. I feel like it's dissipated a little bit now. And I was kind of sad to see Klopp go. But the hate is there just for all those games where there were definitely multiple times where I might be like a couple of minutes late to watching the football. I'd walk in and it'd be 2-0 Liverpool. And I'd be like, what the hell has happened already? Like, do I just walk straight back out? But I think the tides are turning a little bit.
Don't worry. Arne Slot will turn them right back.
Yeah. Let us see. But today, the idea for the pod, I think we're going to title this something like Points of Contention. I'm going to try and come up with something catchier by the time that this gets released. But I've sent Asher my preliminary Eastern Conference rankings. This is for the regular season. Western Conference rankings. And my top 75 players. Asher, I feel like I've been really vulnerable with you. Like, you send this list to someone and it's almost like talking about your trauma or, showing someone your favorite playlists. I feel like you weren't too shocked by any of the placements, but there's definitely some things that you've spotted and you've been like, right, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. No. Starting off, why do you have the Clippers all the way down at 13? What?
Okay, right. We're going straight in. So, Western Conference rankings. I think I had the Jazz 15th, the Trailblazers 14th, and then the Clippers. And I had the Clippers 13th because, number one, the West is really, really good. Number two, have you not heard? The West is really, really good. Number two, I don't know what Kawhi is. Number three, I don't know if James Harden will stick around for the entire season. And number four, I just look at every single team that I have ranked above them. And I just say, I feel like the vibes are better. I feel like they're on a better trajectory. Whereas this Clippers team feels like if they have a slow start, it could be an absolute dumpster fire of a season.
I get that. But also, if you look at the teams you put above them, you could say the same thing about the Phoenix Suns. Okay. You could say a lot of the same things about the New Orleans Pelicans because Zion had his healthiest year last year, and they were still the 10 seed. They still have Brandon Ingram, who is not a good fit on that roster. By the way, I'm not saying that the Pelicans are going to be 13th either. I just think 13th. I'm not high on the Clippers. I think they're going to be a play-in team. But I think 13th is just incredibly low for a roster with Kawhi and Harden still on it. Because, yes, those two are older. Yes, they deal with injury problems. But Kawhi did just play 70 games in a season. It just happened that he broke down by the playoffs. Harden has been a, pretty healthy player for most of his career. And at the very least, he's a good playmaker. And, hey, they got Derrick Jones Jr., the third star, to really complete the big three. So I think they have, a good enough supporting cast of role players around Kawhi and Harden to not be worse than the Spurs, the Rockets, and, the Suns.
Right. So I'm definitely going to disagree on the Suns because I think if you just reduce this to real hooper talk, I would rather have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant than Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. I feel like as a top duo, it's kind of hard to argue that. I also feel like the Phoenix Suns have brought in Mike Budenholzer, missed the regular season consistency. I think that team is going to be able to find sort of a base of playing and sort of sleepwalk to 44, 45 wins, presuming that health is okay. 40, and I think that's a question for both.
44 wins in the West wouldn't have even got you the 11th seed this year.
Yeah, but like we're balancing it out. I think like if you look at like where did I have the Suns? I think I had the Suns 9th.
You had 8, I think. Okay, yeah, 8th. No, sorry, 10th.
10th. So I'm fine with that. I'm happy to say that the Spurs get a bit better. The Rockets stay around 41 and 41. And you share the love out from the top of the Western Conference. I think that the Thunder are going to sort of eviscerate everybody. But coming back to this Clippers team, I also feel like the game has somewhat passed this sort of roster construction style by a little bit. Not only do you have like 2 isolation stars, and I know that James Harden is an all-world playmaker. He's still sort of a top 10 playmaker in the league, despite the fact that his scoring gravity is significantly reduced over the past few years. It just looks to me like this would be a really, really good team in 2017, and we've come a really long way since then.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but also it's the regular season. A lot of it is, hey, you take your turn, I'll take my turn. James Harden is still one of the best table setters in the league. They still have like a decent collection of role players. And also Ty Lue is a really good coach. So like at the end of the day, I'm not saying they're going to be a top 4, top 5, even top 6 seed. I just think they might be like the 10 seed, the 9 seed. I think 13th is incredibly low. I think it would be incredibly funny, so I'm rooting for it to happen.
Right.
Because that would be hilarious. But also, I'm just not sold on Kawhi. Assuming he plays like 60 games, right? I think
I don't want to assume that.
But I think 60 is a healthy assumption to make. It is what I'm saying. And if he does play that, and Harden plays like 70, because Harden has played.
He will.
Yeah, Harden's played a lot.
Yep.
He has to get to all the clubs. You know, he has to stay healthy so he can do that. But if he does that, I think those 2 alone can get you to, as you mentioned, 44, 45 wins. And if that's your bar for the 10 seed, I think they'll probably get to like 47.
So I think that our disagreement comes over health, really. And I just don't know if I'm really... The other thing about Kawhi is, like, for the last couple of seasons where he's really put himself on the line, and you've seen him try to play, like, during that Phoenix Suns series, where he looked like the best player on the court during those first 2 games, and then last year where he strung together an all-NBA caliber season and then sort of broke down by the time he reached the playoffs. That's when they were vying for a title. I think that this is a year of transition for the Clippers. I don't believe that they go into the new arena until 25, 26. So if the message around the organization is, no, we're not really trying to win a title this year, we're sort of looking at options in free agency in 25 and 26 and trying to lure the next big guy to come and play with you, Kawhi. Do you really think he's going to be putting himself out there, putting his body on the line night after night? Or do you think it's more likely that we get a slightly more conservative, ow, my knee hurts, more regularly sort of season from Kawhi this year?
Okay, let's say 55 games are played. Okay, I feel like that's a ouchie, my knee hurts a lot. Can I get a Band-Aid on this boo-boo sort of amount of games, right? They still have, like, in the guards, they have Norm Powell, who can average 20, right?
Yeah.
They have Harden, who is James Harden. Then their backups are like Bones Highland, who is not good. Redacted, who is a good player, unfortunately, but not a good person. Then they have Terrence Mann, who is like a pretty good role player. And then they brought back the play-in champion, Nicholas Batum. And that's a big veteran minimum player right there. I don't know. I think Zubats is also really good. Like, I think I'm higher collectively on a few role players on the Clippers than you are. And I think that's where the disagreement comes from. Because I'm like, I think Kawhi will play 65 games. You're like, I think he's going to play 35 games. But I think that's really what it comes out to.
So, post All-Star last year, the Clippers played 29 games.
Yeah.
Of those 29 games, Kawhi played 20 of them. Paul George played 24, Norman Powell 23, James Harden 24, Zubac 25. You get the picture. They had fairly good health. Would you care to guess what their net rating was in those final 29 games of the season?
Well, I remember they really crumbled down the stretch, so I'll go -4.
Oh my god! All right, you've killed my point. They were -0.5.
Okay.
They were 15 and 14, and they've lost Paul George. Like,
yeah, but they have
they made Paul George in the
friendship.
aggregate? Okay.
They have gained the power of friendship. No. They lost a podcaster at the end of the day. And speaking as one, sometimes podcasters yap a little too much. Now, I mean, I think a lot of that comes down to late in the season, it was a crunch, right? Because they were in contention for the 1 seed up until the last 10 or so games, from what I remember. And it was close. The 1 seed came down to the final day of the season because the Thunder finished with 58 wins, if I remember correctly, and the Nuggets and Timberwolves both finished with 57. So it was a really tight race that they were all really gunning for because the 1 seed in the West is a big deal because home court is also a fairly big deal. And I think a lot of the 15 and 14 of that comes from, hey, they went all out for this whole stretch of the season, where this upcoming season, I imagine they'll be more lax in their approach, and they're not going to be in contention for the 1 seed, so they're not going to have to gun super hard for anything. So I think they'll be able to sort of, chill out and get a better head on their shoulders than, oh shit, we have to do really, really, really well for this entire stretch of the season.
That's pretty fair. I think that one of the things that's really going to decide Western Conference seeding this year is who can beat up on the Eastern Conference teams the most. You look at the East, and there's maybe a top 7, maybe a top 8 if you want to be kind, and then there's another 7 teams that are all absolutely crap in comparison to pretty much anyone in the West. If this LA Clippers team was in the East, they would firmly be in contention for the 5th or 6th seed in my mind. Don't think they'd have to worry about the play-in, but it's really hard. I just think that the other team, so Houston, I think went 41 and 41 last year. The Spurs were horrible to start the year and then closed looking like a competent basketball team, particularly when Wemby was on the floor. I like the additions that they've made. I'm more likely to bet on the health of a younger team, and particularly with Houston. Sorry, health of a younger team, and particularly with Houston, they've got a lot of depth in terms of sort of talent and creation. I think that they can sort of ride out injuries more. Whereas if either of the two guys get injured for the Clippers, I think you go from 500 team to you're winning a third of your games, which is why I've got this low.
What if Wemby or Chris Paul gets hurt?
I don't mind if Chris Paul gets hurt. He's a lovely guy. He's going to teach Steph Curry pick and roll craft, but it's only Wemby. If Wemby gets hurt, then obviously the absolute floor falls out of the Spurs.
Yeah,
but these are the things you have to do in benign off-season Western Conference predictions, right?
Let me say, Houston, I think a lot of people are banking on what they saw at the end of the season, but that involved a Jalen Green leap that I don't think is legit. He was tearing it up in March, and then in April he didn't do so well. So Mickey Mouse March is not the entire season. So I think a little bit there is going to regress to the mean. I think a couple of their guys are getting older. Fred VanVleet is older. I think they'll be a little worse. I do think they'll have some progression.
Jeff Green a little bit older this season.
Yeah. See, Jeff Green is just evergreen, though. He's
Jeff Evergreen.
He's always young.
It should be.
But then I do think they'll get progression from like Amen Thompson, who I'm really high on. Mm-hmm. But also, he's stuck in the depth chart behind, for whatever reason, Fred VanVleet. So I don't think that they'll actually improve all that much, because they had to go on a 12-game win streak in the month of March to finish 500. Right. I don't think a 12-game win streak is going to happen for them this year. And I also think that overall they're not a significantly better team. I do think Reed Shepherd makes them better as well, but I think that they will finish around 500 again.
Kind of around where the Clippers will finish. So it's kind of like
the Clippers will finish with like 46.
I don't think that there's going to be a massive disparity between 10 and 13. I think that 14, 15 are going to be absolutely crap, sort of like 18 wins each this year. And then you're going to look and everyone's going to be sort of around that high 30s, low 40s mark. And then you'll have another line of demarcation further up in the West. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to agree to disagree on the Clippers. I've heard you out. I completely get the idea that James is just the floor-raising player. Yeah. And it would be really, really fun for him to have like a real hooper season and just average 30 again, even if like the true shooting is at like 55%. But it's just a health thing at the end of the day. We'll talk about the Suns at another time, man. I can't believe you brought the Suns up in this. I'm a fair bit higher on them, even if I only have them 10.
I don't know if that's how that works. I think to be a fair bit higher on them, you need them higher.
Yeah, it's the health thing. It's the health thing. Like, you can't just look and say, like. So I'll have a few guests on with these rankings, and I'm sure that eventually we'll get to talk about all the teams. But the Kings are a team that I have above both the Clippers and the Suns, and I think the Lakers and the Rockets as well. And that's because they have the most resilient core of players known to man. Domas is going to play 80 games. DeMar always plays around the 75-game mark. De'Aaron Fox, notoriously healthy. I think that when you're looking for just sort of a regular season record, even if this is the season where the Clippers don't have injuries and it makes me look stupid, I would just rather bet against their health. But anyway, let's move on to slightly higher up in the Western Conference. Sure. A team that's close to your heart, Asher. I think I had Denver 5th.
You did.
Where would you have Denver going into next year?
I think they're a top 3 seed still. I think in the playoffs you'll see more issues with KCP leaving, but like, they have Jokic. I think that's enough to just secure you a top 3 seed, especially considering Jamal Murray doesn't have a torn ACL and Michael Porter Jr. hasn't broken his back yet this season. So like, they finished with 46 or 47 wins in the 6th seed in a season without those two. They have those two, and they do have Christian Brown, who they didn't have back then. The starting backcourt that season fluctuated between Monte Morris and Facu Campazzo at point guard, and Austin Rivers and Will Barton at shooting guard. They were starting Facu Campazzo and Austin Rivers in the playoffs. They are not doing that anymore, and they still won, I think, 47 wins that season. So, like, to me, like, the 5th seed, I think, is around the 50 wins mark. You know, that's like a solid 50 wins, probably gets you around the 4 or 5 seed. I think that they're just going to be a better regular season team than the Mavericks. I think they'll be a better regular season team than one of the Grizzlies or the Timberwolves. I think one of those two teams pops a lot and jumps. I think the other probably is still really good. I'm not saying like all of those 5 teams are title contenders in my mind. You know, like they all could make the finals, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. I think the Thunder are the 1 seed. Outside of that, I think that it's kind of open from there. I think that the Nuggets are probably a 2nd or a 3rd seed, just because Jokic is that good.
It's kind of hard when you're putting these lists together to get past like your off-season biases. So there was like a 6-7 win discrepancy between the Mavericks and the Nuggets last year. I think the Mavericks went 50-32 and the Nuggets went 57 and however many losses that is.
25.
And then you look at the Mavs, and yes, they lose third star for the Clippers, Derek Jones Jr., but they add in Klay Thompson. I think that they look really sharp, and I think that they've just figured something out. Like, what would the Mavs' record have been if they had Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, and Derek Lively for the entire season last year?
I hear you, but also consider the perimeter defense of a starting lineup of Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson.
So
PJ Washington is the point of attack defender.
I think they're going to go a bit smaller. I think that they're going to move Luka to the 4 in lineups, and they'll actually play Dante Exum with that group, like on occasion. So you do actually have a competent perimeter defender out there.
You think that that's going to be the starting lineup, or you think that's going to be a lineup that's played on occasion?
I think there'll be looks. I'm not saying that Dante Exum, $4 million a year, is suddenly going to vault over PJ Washington, who they spent the first round pick on at the deadline and like shot the lights out against the Thunder. Yeah, that's not great, but it's 48 minutes of competent rim protection. It's a defense that has, for the most part, played together, and you're integrating Klay Thompson, who has played in a defense that is sort of modeled on what Dallas does.
Klay Thompson is a bad defender now, like really bad. He's a really bad defender now.
But he's kind of like an equally bad defender against 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s now. So if you want to switch,
But if you were a cone against 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, that still makes you a cone against 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s.
But at the end of the day, you still think they're going to win 50 games this year, right?
I mean, roughly, yeah. But also, like, let me ask you, if they're going against a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who are they putting on him?
My man Dante Exum. Nah. I suppose DJJ is gone. You know, Max Fan coming out the draft.
It's probably PJ Washington, and then that leaves you with, hey, who's guarding J-Dub?
Klay.
And that's not going to go well. And then you get to, I mean, shit. Alex Caruso's a floor spacer. Who's guarding Caruso?
Oh, come on. You can have anyone.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I'm being facetious. but like, you have Chet for the Thunder. That's pulling Gafford or Lively out of the paint. And then that leaves Shai a wide open lane against PJ Washington, or J-Dub a wide open lane against Klay Thompson to just create something and get to the rim. Nuggets, Jokic, you're going to have Chet on him the entire game. That's going to be at the high post.
No, Lively or Gafford.
Yeah, Lively or Gafford. Oops. No. Mix it up in my head. But, Lively, Gafford. One of the two is going to have to be on Jokic the entire game, right?
Yep.
That's going to be in the high post. Backdoor cuts. Klay Thompson's allowing a few of those. Luka's probably allowing a few of those. Kyrie's allowing a few of those. Let alone two-man game with Jamal, where, like, I don't think you ask PJ Washington to guard Jamal Murray. That doesn't sound like the matchup to me, because if you do, who's guarding Aaron Gordon?
I think you ask... I didn't know if we get onto like specific team matchups today, but I'm here for it. I think you actually ask PJ to guard Jokic, you ask Gafford to guard Aaron Gordon, and you ask Klay or Kyrie to guard Jamal Murray.
Okay, great. Then who's on MPJ?
I mean, Luka. Like, MPJ's a phenomenal shooter, and you can run him around screens, but he's never sort of got to the volume to where he's going to absolutely kill you.
Yeah, but he can just shoot over half of the roster, is what I'm saying. Like, I'm just saying, at every single point, even if at every configuration, with those three against all the good teams in the West, because I could do this for, I could do this for the Suns, I could do this for the Pelicans, I could do this for the Lakers, I could do this for the Warriors, I could do this for I could do this for literally every good team in the West. Like, because every good team in the West has like three guys who can shot create and like multiple role players who can punish you if you guard them a certain way.
But you can do this for Dallas the other way around.
You can, but also
who's stopping aside from Boston, who's stopping the Luka pick and roll with either of the fives? who's stopping a second unit that can now add Clay's movement shooting to sort of Kyrie running the show? Who's stopping another year of Derek Lively development on the short roll with even more dangerous shooters sort of spacing around? They've added Quentin Grimes, who's a more competent defender than Tim Hardaway Jr. He's come on, Tim Hardaway. Don't give me that face for Tim Hardaway Jr., man.
Hey, we're in the offseason.
I feel like it's they're not gonna.
I get what you're saying.
Be, like, up there for net rating, but if you're saying like, oh, a lot of these games are going to be a bit of a shootout, I'm backing Dallas to win a lot of those shootouts. That's all.
I get what you're saying, but I think that other teams will get more stops on average against Dallas because every one of the teams we just talked about and like most of the teams in the West are high level offenses. It comes down to, hey, who's a good defense? And I'm taking the defense of Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon over the defense of the Mavericks. I'm taking the Thunder's defense over the Mavericks. I'm taking, I'm taking the Timberwolves, obviously. I'm taking the Grizzlies. I'm taking literally every team like 10 and up in the West above Dallas that you have 10 and up in your standings above Dallas as far as defense goes. So
where do you have Denver offensively this year in comparison to the rest of the pack?
I think they'll be around the same offensive rating. Like I said, I don't think the KCP thing changes too much for the regular season. I think in the playoffs, that's where you'll start to see like, oh, the spacing is falling off. But Christian Brown is a very good offensive rebounder, and I think he plays bigger than he is. So you get to a point with him where you can like rely on, oh, we will be able to rebound more and finish better around the rim and do all that stuff. And like KCP, how many threes a game do you think he took last season?
5?
4. Okay. He's not a high volume shooter. He's a great shooter. And I wish that the Nuggets did not let him walk. I've been very vocal about that, but also Christian Brown in the regular season was a good shooter last year. He shot 38% on like 2.5 attempts a game. Even if he shoots 35% on those 4 attempts, that's like a 4% disparity. That's not great, but you still have Jokic, you still have Jamal, you still have AG, you still have MPJ, and then you slot in a guy who's a better rebounder than KCP was, and probably a better cutter. He shot 60% of the rim last year, but he shot 68% in his rookie season at the rim. I expect that to kind of regress the mean positively because he was a good finisher in college as well. So, like, who should be a better finisher than KCP? I think that kind of stems the tide of the regular season. In the playoffs, I think that's a different discussion because that's when teams start, specifically game planning for teams more. But I think they'll have around the same, if not a better, offensive rating next year.
So last year, lineups with just Nikola Jokic, no KCP or Jamal Murray. The Nuggets had a -1 net rating, which surprised me because if you think back to that fabled season that you spoke about, the Facu Campazzo, Will Barton, Monte Morris, getting the band back together, guys. It seemed like he was just dragging those guys to wins after wins after wins. You said that, and I just thought, how was there ever a debate over MVP that year? How was that not the defining argument for like, look at what he has, look at what he has? It's insane.
Yeah,
I worry about. I can't believe I'm about to say, especially with the loss of Reggie Jackson, but here we are. I worry about the loss of another perimeter ball handler, and I'm not saying that KCP is Kyrie Irving or anything, but I think he was slightly more competent than Christian Brown is, and I think that Reggie Jackson was more competent than both of them. Sure. I think that this season, it's going to be a real slog if Jamal misses any game time.
Let me ask, what do you think lineups with Christian Brown and Nikola Jokic in were the net rating of was?
Now I've got some mental net ratings in front of me. I don't have Christian Brown, so I'm gonna say 11 plus 11
plus 16.9.
how many minutes? Just
1,554 possessions.
Oh my God, that's good. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, I think they'll be fine.
Okay. All right. And the bench should look a little bit better this year. You think, like, if Dayron can come in and actually have an impact,
or Dario, or like they have guys, like they're not relying on Zeke Naji to be good this season. They're not because Zeke Naji got outplayed by DeAndre Jordan, who is like a great teammate and like a really good guy. He's fun to interview, but he is a 38-year-old or something like that who is basically Celtics Shaq at this point without the name value. So like they have two bigs who could, hypothetically do a lot better than what they have had. I think Dario will probably end up being the best backup center since Mason Plumlee, if not better than Mason Plumlee. For them, I'm high on Dayron. I think he'll be really good at the 4 as like the backup 4 this season.
Right.
I think Peyton Watson takes a jump. I think Peyton Watson is really fun, really good. I think he does some ball handling stuff that I don't think people pay attention to. And he shot like pretty decent on mid-range shots. Like he shot, I think, 44% from mid-range this season and had some mid-range flashes. So like that's fun. And then they're likely going to get Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, Russ will be fun, man.
Yeah, so I don't think that'll be great or anything, but I do think if you're like, hey, Russ, get us a bucket, he could still kind of do that. And like, I don't think the drop off from Reggie Jackson to him is that big.
No.
So like, I feel pretty solid about that. And then Julian Strawther, I think Julian Strawther will take a bit of a jump as well. Like he shot 29% from 3, but if you just watch him play, he's a lot better than a 29% shooter. A lot of that has to do with the fact that he didn't play too much and like he got injured at a certain point. So like, let me double check this, but I'm pretty sure before the injury he was shooting a lot better.
Can I just ask, when you talk about the Julian Strawther jump, is that for the Nuggets or the Rapids this year? Because is Michael Malone giving him
that I imagine that's for the Nuggets because he should. Okay, he was shooting 33% before he got injured, which is like still not fantastic. That includes games of like 2 of 8, 1 of 4. Like he had games where he was 6 of 11, where he was 5 of 9. And if you just watch him play the shot diet, the way he immediately gets into his shot, it gives you confidence in him as a shooter. He shot well in college. That's just kind of who he is. Like 6'7", floater in, like he has a floater touch indicator. He just has a lot of things where I'm like, okay, he's going to be a good shooter. And if he's a good floor spacer, then you have a well-spaced hypothetical bench lineup. If they stagger Michael Porter Jr. with the bench, then you have Russell Westbrook, Julian Strawther, Michael Porter Jr., Deron Holmes, and Dario. All 4 of which, besides Russ, are hypothetically good floor spacers.
Yeah, I suppose. Like you've got to find minutes for Peyton Watson in there because I think that Peyton is ahead of Julian Strawther on the depth chart.
Unless... Yeah, he's the backup 3, so in my mind, he's the early stagger for MPJ.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. I'm coming round to it. I definitely am. I don't want to make this just the health podcast with Jack and Asher, but I do think that Denver has had particularly like not incredible, not Sacramento Kings health over the last 2 years, but like in terms of the amount of minutes that MPJ has played.
Yeah,
Jamal was missed 20 games per season.
Give or take. I think he missed over. Yeah, I think he was around 60.
I had that for 23-24. 7 of the top 8 minutes getters played at least 73 games last year.
Yeah,
which is like that's pretty good going. So
yeah, but that's like pretty consistent with them outside of MPJ. Like I think, but also MPJ has been healthy for a few seasons or a couple of seasons at this point. I don't really. I mean, his back is held together by rubber bands and string, but like I think those rubber bands are pretty sturdy nowadays. But also, Jokic at the end of the day is going to play 75 games. He's going to play 70 to 80 games, and Aaron Gordon is going to play 70 to 80 games, and basically everyone besides Jamal is a shoe-in for health, unless a freak accident happens.
Can I ask you about a conceptual thing?
Sure.
Are you at all worried, like, when... Now, I know that the Nuggets were excellent offensively last year. I checked post-All-Star rankings. I think they had a 119 offensive rating, which was good enough for third in the league. Absolutely crushed it, closing the stretch, basically, last year down the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
If I were in Michael Malone's shoes, I would be slightly worried that other teams have seen how good we are, and other teams have copied our playbook sufficiently to where we're not necessarily throwing the stylistic curveball that we once did at the league. Like, they're seeing Philly run similar actions to what Denver run. They're seeing, obviously, the Kings run similar action. Houston tries to do some of it. I think that Indiana actually bakes it in as well. Like, there are more teams, even Cleveland last year with Jarrett Allen. They had like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell flying off screens and running a two-man game with a hub, like a post hub or elbow hub rather. I'm worried about a little bit of sort of like stylistic regression as the league has seen more and more of this handoff style, more and more of these cuts. Are they losing their like market inefficiency a little bit, or do you think that they're just better at it than everyone else?
Well, do you think Jokic is better at handoffs than Sabonis?
Yeah, I do. I think he's the best in the league. I just think that, like,
no, I'm not. I'm just making. Do you think Jokic is better at that than Embiid?
Yeah.
Okay, then I think they're the best of the league at it still, and that sure people are trying to copy it, and they have to some extent. But even if you copy a great, you're still a copy. The great is still, a great. Like, I'm not too concerned about it. Like, there are a lot of people who run motion offense, or at least did back when the Warriors were doing it.
Yep.
Were any of them near the Warriors?
No, not from a motion point of view. I'd just say that, like, the Warriors used to have this edge over everyone. And yes, you can say, like, the talent has changed, etc.
I think they still do.
But they don't from an offensive rating point of view. They used to blow teams out the water. And then as people have sort of adjusted their style, as people have leant over and sort of read what the Warriors were writing during their exam, that stuff has been integrated. And I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I'm just saying that, like, it's not the night-to-night curveball during the regular season that you would have had a couple of years ago, where it was like one or two teams are doing this. Now it feels like a lot of teams are doing this, and I think that that's a bad thing for Denver. Even if they are the best at it, it's like defensively, I think teams might catch up a little bit this season with what they're trying to do.
Okay, here's my thing, okay? So a lot of the Nuggets' offensive rating from previous seasons has come from transition, yeah?
Right.
The thing with them this year, you want to take a guess at where they ranked as far as transition offense in the league?
I feel like they played quite slow last year. So, like in the 20s? I'd say like 21.
They were, let me double check this, but I'm pretty sure they were dead last in transition offense, like offensive rating in transition, not frequency or anything, just offensive rating. Right, that is not a thing I see happening for a second year in a row, especially considering they're adding Christian Brown in place of KCP, who, like, I love KCP, but he would miss so many layups just in transition. And if you look at the half-court offense, they were a 119.1 offensive rating. That was 5th in the league. And then if you look at transition, they were not dead last in the league, but they were 29th. So
how dare you get that wrong on my podcast? Dead last 29th. Check your facts, man, before you come on here and you spout this absolute crap. Honestly, it's like watching a political debate. Do you want to call me Putin? Do you want to?
Oh God,
yeah, it's not.
Vice President Trump.
Yeah,
no, but they were tied for 30th with the Hornets.
Right.
So, do you think that again they will be 30th in the league again in transition?
No, I doubt it. Like you said, Russ coming.
So I think that makes up for the market inefficiency there.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. God, they were second last in free throws. They were dead last in 3-point attempts last year.
Yep.
They are still a completely different team. So the Mavs, you feel strongly about being a worse regular season team. Completely get that.
Yeah.
And then you think one of Memphis or Minnesota isn't going to have the impact that you think.
Yeah.
That I think at least.
Yeah, I think one of them will either struggle with injury or one of their stars will be like, not as good as they should be. Like maybe Karl Anthony Towns struggles a little bit, or maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. fouls one too many times a game.
I just think I went for those two above Denver because like 1 to 10 they're loaded, and I think that matters during the regular season. I'm a big Memphis guy, and they were a great regular season team before the whole Joss thing, the awful injury luck, etc. So
I agree, but also, do you agree that best player matters a lot in the regular season?
Yeah, of course.
And is Jokic a tier above either of those teams' best players?
100%. Yeah.
Is he 2 tiers above either of those teams' best players?
Like a tier and a half above.
Yeah. That's my argument.
That's fair. All right. Well, let's move away from the West.
Sure.
Let's move to the East. I don't feel like either of us care as much about the Milwaukee Bucks, but we're going to get into them because I feel like no one ever talks about the Milwaukee Bucks for some reason. Like they went out the postseason so early. The last thing I heard was Doc Rivers on Bill Simmons' podcast saying Dame came up to him and said, I didn't have a training camp last year. I really struggled. I wasn't healthy. I was catching up. And that was Doc promising essentially that you're going to see the real Dame again this year.
Yeah.
I don't know about Milwaukee, so I think I had them. Let me get my
7th.
Up here.
You had them 7th.
7th. Well, that's spicy.
Yeah, it is. That's why I'm like, I'm not even like super high on the Milwaukee Bucks, but I'm like, you have them as a play-in team in the East.
I do think that the top half of the East looks good.
I mean, sure, but also, okay. Let's talk about, since you wanted to talk about injuries in the West, let's talk about injuries in the East, shall we?
Yeah.
The 76ers. Joel Embiid misses a lot of time.
Yep.
Paul George misses a lot of time. Those are 2 of their 3 best players.
Yeah.
And they have, I think, worse depth this season because of the big 3 than they did last year. And we saw last season that Maxey is not a floor raiser when by himself.
No, I think he won about 38% of his games when he was by himself. And it looked like a real slog.
So my thing is...
Yeah, go on.
Giannis is healthy for the regular season for the most part. In the playoffs, it's a different story. Dame is pretty healthy most of the time. Dame,
you don't know at this age, though. There could be a nagging thing. I think he plays through it a lot of the time. I think that you probably look back to that Blazers year where he had the abdominal issue and they held him out, and that was sort of 30 games.
He played 73 games last year.
He did, but he was a foul baiting shell of himself, wasn't he?
Yeah, but that foul baiting shell of himself still got them to the 3rd seed in the East.
So aside from Philadelphia, is there anyone that I have above Milwaukee that you look at and you can confidently say, I think this team will finish below the Bucks this year?
I think Pacers and Cavs.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. because here's my thing is like they finished third above those teams this season. Those teams, in my opinion, have not gotten markedly better. Have they gotten like significantly better to you?
So I think that the Pacers were a better team than Milwaukee post trade deadline last year. I remember them having a +6 net rating post All-Star, just genuinely sorted out their defensive issues, maintained their offensive efficiency, despite the fact that Tyrese Halliburton was playing through a hamstring injury for the entirety of basically 2024, I'd say. So yeah, I look at the Pacers and I think that I see depth in terms of scoring. I actually see a little bit of depth on the wing room. And I think that they're going to be a really good regular season team this year.
Okay. I mean, I can see that. I just think, like, one of the teams that you have above them will not finish above them. I think one of those three teams, at bare minimum, will finish below the Bucks. Like, I just have a hard time seeing them go from the 3 seed to the 7 seed when, to me, the teams below them did not get significantly better, sans the 76ers. And the teams, like, and I think they got a little, I think they probably stayed just the same, you know? Like, they cycled in, cycled out some role players, but to me, unless I'm completely forgetting some departure or some addition, I think they stayed around the same. Like, Delon Wright to me is not really that much worse of a player than Malik Beasley.
Like, and he's certainly better than Pat Bev if you're looking at like just cumulative height in a backcourt.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've had as short a backcourt as Pat Bev and Damian Lillard since like the 90s. That's got to be like a Muggsy Bogues Hornets team or something.
Yeah, Dame and CJ, I guess. Like,
there you go. Yeah,
yeah, just Dame backcourts. But like, I think they had an awful draft. I don't think AJ Johnson is going to be good.
Yeah,
but also, like, I have a hard time seeing a team with Giannis and Dame finish 7th in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and Giannis was incredible last year. Like, I think he may have had a career efficiency year, which is insane when you're talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't necessarily know if that's going to go. One of the reasons why I had them a shade lower than some of the other teams that we're speaking about is the Brook Lopez trade rumors. And I think that while it's just a rumor for now, you do have to bake this into sort of a prediction being made this early.
Sure.
If they lose Brook Lopez, I think that they lose quite a lot of their regular season equity because you have to reinvent the defense then.
I think you're overestimating how good Brook Lopez still is. I don't think he's good.
I think you're underestimating the defensive scheme that they've had and how hard it will be to bring in a new defensive scheme if you move Brook for, say, like, it's hard. It's kind of like Brook for Bruce Brown and a pick or something like that. I've had to play around on the trade machine. Like, they can't exactly bring in another wing defender that's going to significantly upgrade their perimeter defense.
Yeah, but also they could use that pick to trade for a center.
Yeah, they could.
And I think there's a decent amount of centers that are better than Brook Lopez at this point.
But if you trade for another center that doesn't actually have the spacing threat, and I know that we talk about like these spacing fives all the time, and really they take like 2 threes per game. But Brook is a genuine spacer at this point. I think he took 4.5 threes per game. That's like KCP levels of threes. You know, do you dampen some of Giannis's impacts at the rim if suddenly you do actually have a 5 parked in the dunk spot permanently?
I think Giannis will just finish regardless, but yeah, I could see it. I can see the point there, but I don't think they're actually going to trade Brook.
I think we're both entirely less passionate about this Milwaukee Bucks ranking than we were any of the others. So I think it might be time to go to players.
Yeah, sure. Let's go to players.
Where are you on Kevin Durant? Just like as a guy, as a basketball player, legacy wise, are you a KD stan? Are you a KD hater?
No.
Are you somewhere in between?
Probably somewhere in between. I mean, I disliked him when he went to the Warriors, but also I was 12, so like, that doesn't really stick with me so much.
Were you crunching a lot of synergy tape at 12?
I've been a sicko since I've been a sicko for a long time, but not quite. I wasn't crunching synergy tape. I can't say I was.
Nice.
But I think he's still really good. I'm not saying he's not, but also you had him 7th in the league. I don't even think he's the best player on his team anymore.
Oh wow!
I think Devin Booker's better.
Right.
Like he's not a good defender anymore. He does not create any rim pressure. He is basically just KD's shot right now. And a lot of the reason KD was so good in his prime was because he was able to get to the rim. He had a really good handle. He could create a lot of rim pressure. Since the Achilles and since the all that stuff, he has not been able to get to the rim. And I think he's worse than he was than he was in Brooklyn. So like, I look at Ant. Ant was way better in the playoffs than KD was. And I know that that's just the playoffs, but I do value playoffs highly, and I think that'll come up quite a bit in these player talks. So I want to just preemptively say I value the playoffs a lot because that is when you're trying to win. That is the stage. But also, I don't think Ant was like that much worse than KD in the regular season, if at all. Like, I know it is just stats, but KD averaged 27, 6, and 5. I'm like really good efficiency, but that's KD's game, and Ant averaged 26, 5.5, and 5. I'm like not as good of efficiency, but also he's a really damn good defender. So like I think that makes up for the inefficiency difference there, right? And then like I don't know, I think AD is better than him. I think Tatum is better than him. I think Ja is better than him.
Oh, wow.
I think by the season's end, Wemby will be better. Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But, like, I think that a lot of the guys you have, like, just directly below him will be better. I still think he's a top 20 player. I just don't think he's a top 10 player.
Okay. So, mega small sample size. In the 4 games against Minnesota during that first round series last year, KD scored 27 points per game on 58% from 2, 42% from 3, got to the line 8.5 times per game, made 82% of his free throws, which is low for him, only 3.5 assists and 2.5 turnovers, which is actually low for KD over the last couple of years. The issue with him was the usage, where it's like
low.
One of my favorite like sporting metaphors that I ever heard was about Cristiano Ronaldo, and it was when he was at Juventus, and they said when Cristiano Ronaldo played for Real Madrid, he was a fighter jet. He was like an all-action dogfights, carries the weaponry, mega fast, mega agile, can do it all on his own. And by the time he got to Juventus, he's a large cannon, where it's like you have to wheel him into place, but when he hits, he still packs like plenty of punch. And I think there's an argument that KD is maybe getting there now, to where he can't necessarily create a massively high volume of his looks as he used to. But I disagree on the defending thing. I think he was probably the Suns' best defender last year.
But is that a high bar?
It's not a high bar, but when you look at the actual tax on Kevin Durant in his age 35 season, he was so incredibly efficient.
Yeah, I guess I want to walk back that he's not a good defender. I just don't think he's as good of a defender as he was in Golden State.
So part of this is like, I think that I went a little bit off vibes, but I kind of went off like, if I had to build a team next year to win the championship, it's almost like, what order would I pick these players if you were doing like a 2K style fantasy draft?
Yeah.
And part of the reason why I have KD higher than some of the other guys that we've mentioned, and I'm not going to say that they're necessarily like massively heliocentric and only function in one system, is I still think that if you put KD next to anyone, he's still providing you elite level impact offensively and really decent impact defensively.
I will say,
yeah,
that's a fine philosophy for team building, but I think when it comes to player rankings, it's different because Ant is going to be in a heliocentric offense. You know, he's going to be the guy. So, like, would you rather have Ant in his current situation, or would you rather have KD?
What I think I'm saying is I would rather have KD and a worse number one. I say one than a worse like offensive engine, primary pick and roll ball handler than and the wing that I can get at 2 by the time that rolls back round, if that makes sense. Like when you're building your team, I think if you look at it in terms of value, like if you put KD next to, I think Trae Young's maybe a little bit high for this, but if you put KD next to any high volume pick and roll creator, I think that he's going to be insanely useful. And again, like I don't want to just get into KD v Ant because I think it's perfectly fine if you want to have Anthony Edwards at 7 and KD at 8. But
he's just who I'm going with as like the to me, I mean, if you need an engine to have value to me, you have less value almost inherently than an engine, which is why I think Booker is better than KD.
Right.
Because to me, Book is not necessarily that much worse defensively than KD. He creates a lot of KD's looks. He creates his own looks, like at a higher volume than him. I think he is more of a threat, you know, defensively than KD. And also, if I'm looking at the playoffs, I know this season he was good, right? But you look last season against the Nuggets, game 2 and 3. Game 2, he shot 10 of 27, 2 of 12 from 3.
Last year, Devin Booker turned the sliders on and went on the hot streak of all hot streaks. I remember listening to Thinking Basketball where he was like, I think maybe I've been a little bit low on Devin Booker because now he is having a run that has only been rivaled by like 1988 to 1991 Michael Jordan in terms of efficiency and volume. But like, I get your engine point, but at a certain point there comes a like, who's a better player, Kevin Durant or Trae Young? Because Trae Young is an offensive engine unto himself.
Yeah, that's why I said like, that's why I mean on a similar level. Right. Because Devin Booker, we went over KD's averages. He had a 62% true shooting. Okay. Devin Booker averaged 27, same amount of points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, more assists on a 61% true shooting. And that is with a significantly higher usage. That is with a significantly higher, like, ball handling, you know, responsibility. So if I'm looking between the two, whose team is it? In my mind, it's Booker's team, because like he's the guy who creates the offense. He's the guy who everything sort of relies upon. So when I'm looking at them, they average the same amount of points, but one of them was inherently to me inherently more valuable than KD, because KD needed Booker to work. Booker didn't necessarily need KD to work offensively.
I'm going back to the play-by-play. Well, I could be looking something up and it's going to be like awful for whatever I'm about to say, and I'm going to have to filibuster for a couple of seconds. But KD Booker. So Kevin Durant without Devin Booker or Bradley Beal last year in 624 minutes, led lineups with a plus 6.67 net rating. Devin Booker without Kevin Durant or Bradley Beal led in 483 minutes, led lineups with a plus 5.49 net rating. Now, I'm not saying that, that is like conclusive proof. It works, blah, blah, blah. It's during the regular season. It's you don't know who they're playing. But I really value the scalability of KD being able to handle massive scoring load. And I think that his usage was only taken down because they played against at least the second best defense in the playoffs last year during that first round. Like in hindsight, I know that a lot of people picked Phoenix for that series. I didn't. I did a cheeky little Minnesota Timberwolves podcast just before that started and was like, this could be really fun. I just think that I don't know if it's the archetype. Like there kind of still only is one KD, whereas other guys can do impressions of what a Devin Booker, Trae Young, your offensive engine does.
So I want to just quickly bring up, according to Clean Glass, with Devin Booker on the floor and KD off, you want to take a stab at the net rating?
Well, I had Devin Booker with no KD.
I know, Beal. or Beal. Yeah, I'm filtering out the like Beal stuff. Plus 6.1.
Okay.
KD in minutes without Devin Booker was a plus 2.8. So I don't know the Beal factor there.
What is Bradley Beal doing, huh?
I don't know. But
is that
his? I just am like, I don't know. I'm still like, KD is still like top 15 to 20 range for me, but he's probably in that 15 to 20 range for me rather than 7.
I struggle to
get to that point.
I struggle to get to that point, and I struggle to have. It's stupid to pick out Devin Booker specifically, but just because I don't think that like Devin Booker is the best at what he does in the league, and I think that while it's incredibly hard to do what Devin Booker does, I think that if you're a draft scout, again, if you were just making up this team in a vacuum, I think it's easier to replace his production than it is KD, which is why he just gets this sort of like special little scalability benefit from me, I suppose. But I definitely get this idea that if you're not weighing that in, the offensive superpowers have waned slightly, and he's not quite the same defender that he was, although I think that he is still a pretty good defender.
Like, because to me, player rankings are different than who I would have if I'm building a team. I think they're pretty close, like I don't think I'm going to be like, oh, this one player's number 20 on my player rankings, but I would never have him on a winning team.
Yeah.
But like Zach LaVine is a top 100 player in the league. He is probably not someone I would want on a championship contender. He would probably not be in the first 100 I list.
Don't do this to me. on our first podcast, this is our second podcast. The listeners are still here. On our first podcast, I came to back Zach LaVine. I've since done a Zach LaVine video, and Asher could have picked anyone in the world. He could have picked Damian Lee. He could have picked Trae Young, Brandon Ingram, whoever you want to pick. And he's decided to go for, I don't think I'd have Zach LaVine if I was trying to win if I was trying to build a winning team.
Yeah.
You better watch my video after this. You're going to be swayed.
But like, it's just so they're not inherently 1-to-1 for me as they appear to somewhat be for you. Because to me, KD is someone who, it's like the second round of a fantasy draft, right? And it's like, oh, well, I already have my number 1. KD is the best number 2 in the league. But also, I don't think KD is quite good enough to be a number 1 anymore. If I'm trying to win a title. Obviously, he'll still get you to the playoffs or something. But like, I think I kind of value just being able to be a number 1, and like the players you have above him, I think they're all better number 1s. I think Ant is a better number 1. I think LeBron is probably a better number 1 still. I think AD is probably a better number 1. Jason Tatum just won a title as a number 1. I think Mitchell is probably a better like engine at this point. So like he drops a little bit, but not like significantly so. It's just like he goes from like 7 to like 14 to 15 for me.
Now this isn't even like a straw man argument. It's just it's a bad point that I'm about to make. But
okay,
like, do you think that if you swap out Kevin Durant for Jason Tatum on that variation of the Celtics, they don't still just like completely breeze to a title?
Well, that's the Celtics. Like, we're talking...
Sorry, you just said like Jason Tatum was a number 1 on a championship team.
Yeah.
I think
but at that point, KD isn't the number 1 on the championship team. It's Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is creating most of the offense. Jaylen Brown would be creating a lot of opportunities for KD, no?
I don't know if he creates a lot of opportunities for anyone, but
yeah, I know.
but no,
like,
I get your point. Like he carried a lot of scoring volume last year during the postseason. He was great.
Yeah.
I get it. Let's park that. I acknowledge that was a crap point to start.
Yeah,
with,
you said, hey, this is a bad point. Let me make it. So like,
yeah. Listen, Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo make a career out of making bad points and not acknowledging that they're bad points.
Do you want to be Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo?
I'd like the boat. I'd like the house in LA. You know,
yeah.
I'd like the podcasting full time. I'm saying that there was growth in saying this is a bad point. Hear me out. I didn't do a Kyle turn the TikTok camera on. You've ripped my heart out with the Zach LaVine thing. Let's get into Jamal Murray, and then we'll close on Draymond. So,
sure.
Asher, where would you have had Jamal?
You had Jamal 40. I don't think he's like top 20. Like I think the Ringer still has him top 20.
Yeah.
But like to me at this point, I think he should be in the Kyrie Irving, Damian Lillard tier, and you have him 10 spots below them. So like you can go.
You said before we got into the KD point how much you value the playoffs, which would explain why Jamal is 10 spots higher.
Mm-hmm.
I just find it quite hard to reconcile during the regular season that the volume drops off that much. That Jamal is in his perfect spot, and it's one of those where like I'd never pick him to be a number one. I think that he's a good number two,
right?
But
well, are you picking Dame to be a number one at this point?
No, I'm not. But I do think that Dame could do a better impression of a number one. And I also think that, like, if you swap Dame and Jamal out onto their respective teams, I just come away thinking that Denver gets better and Milwaukee gets worse.
I don't think so. Like, here's the thing with Jamal to me is, like, he is in his perfect spot. I will absolutely acknowledge that, right?
Yeah.
He is at his best playing off of Nikola Jokic, and he gets to do that. However, we're ranking them based off what they are now. We're not ranking them based hypothetically off if Dame and Murray switch spots, Sure. And to me, like this past playoffs, I'm kind of writing off as he wasn't healthy because he was dealing with the calf strain. He played through it. He still had his moments. He was really bad for most of it, but like he did have his moments, right?
Yeah.
Then you get into regular season stuff. And Dame is better in the regular season. I will not pretend, I'm not going to even feign, but Damian Lillard averaged only, whatever. Like, no, Dame is
a game, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he did only average 3 more points a game on worse efficiency, actually. No, you know what? I am going to average that Murray was better.
You're going to say he's better in the regular season. Okay.
Last season. like overall he would be. But Dame averaged 24, 4 and 7 on 59 true shooting. Jamal averaged 21, 4 and 7 on 59% true shooting as well. But I think like 42.5% three. Like I don't know. I'm just kind of okay. I'm not. I think there were similar levels of regular season production there. But to me, when you get into the playoffs, outside of last season where he was unhealthy, historically speaking, he is the biggest playoff riser in NBA history.
Okay.
And there is multiple postseasons of him doing that. We have 3 postseasons of him rising incredibly, and then 1 of him not doing well. So I'm still willing to bank that he is still a very, 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 very good playoff performer. I just have a hard time watching Kyrie brick everything in the finals and being like, you know what? Jamal Murray couldn't do the same thing. Like, to me, Kyrie is probably a better regular season player. But I think they're I think I'd rather have Jamal in the postseason, taking their like the last few years into account, right? Because last year, last year, the Nuggets championship run, Jamal was incredible.
Yeah.
I don't think Kyrie has had a playoff run on that level.
Maybe like 2017?
I don't even think then. Like,
Jamal was absolutely incredible last year. Yeah.
Yeah, he was averaging like 27, 28 points a game on absurd efficiency. And that is exactly what he did in the bubble as well. Like, to me, he is the perfect number 2 for Jokic's perfect number 1. And in that spot, he has produced time and time again, and he has won a ring out of it. Dame hasn't won a ring out of it. And like, ring culture is kind of stupid, but if you have a ring, and the Nuggets do, I will lean into the ring culture bit a little bit, you know? I will lean into it.
It's your right as a recent first time championship winner to lord it over whoever doesn't have it. Yeah.
Yeah, like an Arsenal fan. And he's just, to me, he took a passing leap last season. I think he's still just as good of a scorer. And he's a pretty good rebounder for a guard too.
And he is a little bit bigger than the other two guys that we're talking about, although I thought that Kyrie held up exceptionally well for his size and for the people that he was playing against last year in the postseason. I just disagree on the Jamal is the perfect number 2 to Jokic's perfect number 1 thing. I am a little bit lower on their fit. I just think that Jokic is that good that he has elevated Jamal to looking like that. And like I had Jokic 1, and I have Jokic 1 by quite a significant distance. I really struggle to weigh up the fact that like the Jamal bench units aren't the best you've ever seen. Now the sport cast isn't great.
May I implore you to consider the fact that his big was either Zeke Naji or DeAndre Jordan, and that his floor spacers were
Naji, you say, no.
And that his floor spacers were Christian Brown and Peyton Watson. May I implore you to consider that in those lineups, that's what he was playing with.
So do you think that this year, with a more spaced out court, if you ever see like Russ play with Jokic and you see Jamal handle the second unit creation, then we see better Jamal Murray bench units because it's a better space floor? Okay.
I do think better. I don't think they'll have like a positive net rating per se, but I do think they'll be better. And also, I should say, I think he's the perfect number 2 for the level of player he is. Obviously, if you like put Ant on as the number 2 to Jokic, Ant is way better. But of the like 3 we're talking about, I think Jamal is the best for like what he does.
Okay, sorry, 1 second. Just want to get this right.
No problem.
In 405 minutes without Nikola Jokic on the court last year, Jamal Murray on, Nikola Jokic off, the Nuggets had a minus 15.5 net rating. And I know that the supporting cast was bad, but Milwaukee wasn't that deep. I just think that he's great at raising your ceiling in this context, and he's a player that I love the fact that he works off ball. I love the fact that he can score at all 3 levels. Really crafty finisher. I like that he can get into like his bully ball game if he's up against a smaller guard as well. Really great spacer. I just think from a pure like floor raising perspective, I want to see more if I'm going to rank you in like the top 25 to 30.
Yeah, but does Kyrie really raise the like if? Also, you have to consider like the Nuggets play Jokic ball. They do not. They don't have a bench unit optimized to play Jamal Murray ball. All the players on the bench are Jokic ball players without Jokic. They put him in a shit position to try and lift up this shit unit. Because, like, do you think Zeke Naji or DeAndre Jordan was a positive player last year?
No, God, no.
No, I'm not insinuating you do. I'm just making a point here.
Yeah.
Do you think Peyton Watson at the 4 is a good thing?
Like last year, next to Jokic, no. Sorry, not next to Jokic, no.
Uh-huh. Do you think Christian Brown, without Jokic, is good?
No.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that any of the Nuggets bench, do you think Reggie Jackson next to Jamal is good?
Well, that's two ball handlers, man. Now you're really cooking. Like you're looking like the Houston Rockets, Chris Paul, James Harden. Like I get where you're coming from.
So
I just
want you to consider. You literally said not one player that he played next to was good in the context in which they played in.
I know, but I've seen. Now this is a different level of player. I know that you're not comparing this Jamal Murray to back then Damian Lillard, but like I've seen Damian Lillard carry Al-Farouq Aminu and Mo Harkless to like a 50-win season with Portland, where there's been no help, and that's like up against regular season starters as opposed to bench players. I think that Jamal was probably one of the harder players to rank in the NBA because of the context that we've always seen him in, and because of the fact that we're probably not going to see him out of that context. I think that he's either signed an extension or he's on the verge of signing that extension. He's going to be paired with Jokic for hopefully like the duration of their careers, basically.
Yeah.
So I get the gap. What about the other guys in between? Because like let's not go through all of the names here, but like there's the comparison to other primary ball handlers, which is kind of hard to do because like they're in different situations. But the names that I had directly above Jamal,
like why do you have Brandon Ingram above him? That's one of the ones where I'm like, why the hell is Brandon Ingram above him?
Because I love Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's hard. Like sometimes you make these lists and you try to be really objective and you try to be like it's what we've seen, etc. But when you're ranking all the players in the league, like I'm really, really high on Brandon, and you know, we actually had this discussion on Ball on the Slop stream where I'm like, I'm really high on what he can be as a primary. Sure. Like as a primary, he is 28, 8, and 6 at 59%, 60%
on the 11 seed.
But like, you know, that's good production. That's
for an 11 seed.
I know, but if you put Jamal on those Pelicans teams without Zion Williamson,
I'm saying neither of them is a good primary.
I don't know. I think you could find a good environment. Like you should have picked Brandon Ingram if you wanted to have this chat, buddy. But
I'm picking Brandon Ingram now, buddy.
Like Tyrese Maxey, Scotty Barnes, Paolo.
I think Tyrese Maxey's on his level. I think Paolo's better than Jamal. But like, I'm not saying he's better than all of the names you have above him. I'm just saying, like, what is Desmond Bane bringing to the table that puts him over Jamal? But like, offensively, he's not as good as Jamal.
He averaged 6 assists per game last year, 58% true shooting on a team with less help than the Denver Nuggets.
It don't mean a thing without a ring, buddy.
You've gone ring culture, man. Like honestly,
I have. Yeah,
Desmond Bane is one of the higher level 2s in the league when you look at what he can do from a creation standpoint, from an off-ball standpoint, from actually guarding the other team's good guard.
Do you think that Desmond Bane is as good as Jamal Murray was in the championship run if you take last year's Desmond Bane and just drop him into that context?
No, I don't. Okay. But I also think that was Jamal playing out of his mind.
But he's done that in multiple postseasons.
I know, but I just
we have a larger sample size of him doing that than him not doing that. Literally one bad postseason is all he's ever had. Outside of that, he's risen to that level.
Yeah, he's risen for 2. Like I looked at, I didn't want to bring up 18, 19. You know, let's not split hairs there. Like was
18, 19, he did rise as well.
He rose, but he rose to 21 points per game after an 18 point per game season instead of 26 points per game on lights out efficiency and the playmaking and everything. Yeah. Like, I think that we probably get back to the whole like roster construction thing when we talk about Desmond Bain v Jamal Murray, I think that you could probably, I would start Desmond Bain on all 30 teams in the league, and I think that he would have a more positive impact than Jamal on more of them.
I think that that's a fair point, but I also think if I'm a contender, I'd rather have Jamal Murray. And
okay. All right. Well,
my rankings, I think we just have different philosophies on how we rank players. Because to me, I'm like, if I am a contender, who would I rather have?
We do.
And then I rank from there. You are more, generally speaking, who like you're higher on floor raising than I think I am.
I think you have to factor in floor. I think that you can't just do ceiling, contention, etc. Because
I do factor it in. I just think we value. I just think we weigh it differently.
And I think that hopefully we get to see this version of Desmond Bain, because unlike Jamal, who I think has by and large sort of hit his ceiling, I think that we'll see like micro improvements as the years go on. But then the athleticism is going to wane. Like you said, Jamal is sort of the player that he's going to be. Yeah. Whereas since we've seen Desmond Bain in the postseason, I think that he's had a while to work on his game. I don't think that he was healthy in the last postseason that he played. So, hopefully we just get a result either way where you get to see Desmond Bain in a postseason and you get to see what that looks like. Because I think that just from a playoff point of view, he's like 2-guard in the lab, isn't he? Like you draw someone up, unless you make his arms longer.
Yeah,
he's
right Desmond Bain's really good. I'm not saying all of these players that we're talking about are really good.
Should we close on Draymond? Because I feel like we're at an impasse on Jamal here. Like we both understand each other's point of views.
Yeah.
You don't want to click off just yet, Asher, but I'm getting you there. Like there's been a little bit of an anti-Nuggets agenda, which I do not try and propagate. I love the Nuggets. I would say that
5th seed, you love them? I don't know.
I do. I don't know if I love Julian Strawther as much as you, but like I love the Nuggets as a whole.
I just said he was a decent shooter at it. That's all I said.
I'm being sarky, man. I'm being sarcastic.
I know. I'm joking.
Right. I think it's Draymond time.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna be really granular here, okay?
Okay.
Why do you have him above Pascal Siakam?
I'm in a tunnel. My connection's gone. No. I think I have him over there. Over Pascal Siakam, because I think that he's probably a top. It's so hard when you do like these top 5, 10, 15 blank like defender things. All right, you might have got me on Pascal Siakam. I might be regretting that placement. So go ahead, list the next name, and I'll do the exact same thing. Where I'm like,
Derek White.
And maybe I should have had him lower.
Derek White.
I kind of think that they're pretty level. I think that I don't think that Draymond has dropped off too much from the 2022 championship season. I think that when he's on the court, he can still anchor a pretty elite defense. I think that he's more playoff proven than nigh on anyone that we'll ever talk about. And one of the other things is I think that Draymond would be more useful in more settings than a lot of people probably give him credit for, where sort of in the same way that we've had this Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic debate, a lot of people tie Draymond to Steph and say, well, if he wasn't with Steph, then like there'd be these spacing issues, etc.
Why do you disagree?
Pardon?
Why do you disagree with that point?
With what?
With tying him to Steph?
Because I think that, like, if you're watching Team USA at the moment, if you're watching Team USA at the moment, you see front courts of Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis, and I think that Draymond is probably pretty similar to like Bam Adebayo in a different system, where I think that if you played him in two big lineups with actual rim protectors, not like Kevon Looney, who can't jump off the ground, who can only sort of rebound. I think if you played him with like vertical rim protectors, he would anchor one of the top 3 defenses in the league. I think that if you want to play him as your 5-out option, he anchors a really, really good defense still. I think that he can still switch on to some of the elite wings, elite forwards. I'm not going to say guards anymore. Like, I think if he's in an isolation against Jamal Murray, for an example, like he's probably going to get cooked these days. But I think I'm just still really, really high on his defense. And I think I'm higher on it universally than I am just in the Golden State system.
Sure. Can you not say a lot of the same things you just said about Derek White, though? And Derek White is also a better floor spacer at this point. He's also someone who can play make a little bit. He's also someone that can score a little bit.
Where is Derek?
He's like,
yeah, he is. Yeah. He is. He's brilliant. They're in the same tier for me. Would you have them like? So I have Draymond Green at 42 here, just for the listeners. Where would
like I said, I'm being very granular.
yeah. Where would you have Draymond Green?
Probably
like
closer
if you had to do this to...
This is just a ballpark, but probably in the 50 to 55 range.
Okay. So it's not that different.
Yeah, I just wanted to be an asshole about Draymond Green. That's all
like. I'm trying to get some on-off stuff here.
I don't know. I think he's worse than Herb Jones at this point.
In 123 minutes, this is a sarcastic point, just before you talk about the sample size. In 123 minutes without Steph Curry on the court, Draymond Green lineups had a plus 19.97 net rating. So I think maybe I had Steph too high.
Maybe. I think
maybe
I should have disagreed with your Steph placement.
Yeah. What are we doing here? Yeah, Draymond is a hard one. I feel like I'm struggling to back this up more than I was the other two. I think part of it is sort of respecting the past and respecting what he was, and the other part of it is what do you think has dropped off in the last 2 seasons since the championship season, aside from attitude and temperament?
Well, I think you have to take into account attitude and temperament, because that attitude and temperament has caused him to miss a decent amount of time. But also,
okay, so I didn't factor in the off-court stuff as much here.
Yeah, I also think that just athletically,
I was just kind of like, when he's on the floor, this is what he is.
Yeah. I think athletically he's declined a little bit. I think offensively he's declined a little bit. He was almost a non-factor scoring during the championship run. I just think he's just a non-factor, like, doing that now. And his passing is still really good, but to be a good passer and for it to show, you need to have some scoring gravity, because if you don't, you become Facu Campazzo or Josh Giddey. So, like, defensively he's great still, but he's such a non-factor offensively that it drops him quite a bit for me. Like, I think Herb Jones is better. I think they're not too dissimilar defensively, and I think Herb Jones is at least a positive floor spacer. So, like, to me, that sort of brings him above him. I think, I could say similar things about a Jalen McDaniels or an Alex Caruso as well.
Yeah, it's hard with those guys because, like, if we're going ring culture for Jamal Murray, it's very hard to sort of look past what Draymond was. And a season ago, he finished 4th in Defensive Player of the Year voting.
Yeah.
There have been stretches where that Golden State team has been healthy and they've done decent impersonation of what they once were. So it's just hard to go from, like, at his peak, he was probably like a top, I'd say, like, 25 impact player.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's crazy to say.
No.
Like, during those sort of like KD runs. So I find it hard to drop him much further when like they're still kind of capable of the same stuff.
But here's my thing: is the rings for them happened a while ago, outside of 2022. But even then, 2022 is a while ago in sports years. So like, I think the situation and context for him has dropped significantly. I don't think the Warriors are getting close to touching another ring ever again under Steph and Draymond at least. And I just don't think he's good in other contexts anymore. Like, I think in his prime, if you dropped him onto more teams, he would be good. But I don't think now he would be like a very good fit for many teams, especially considering the off-court stuff.
I think I was capable of putting up a really good fight for pretty much everything that we've spoken about. And we've got to Draymond, and I don't know if it's an energy thing. I don't think it's an energy thing. I think it's a Draymond was too high on my list thing.
I got one in.
Asher, I think you're right. I think that if we look, and hey, you didn't make a single point today where I was like, oh, what? That's insane. That's ridiculous. I don't think that we've had. You might have looked at my list and you might have been like, that's insane. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Brandon Ingram, 34.
Yeah, that is ridiculous to me, but I'll let sleeping dogs lie.
But here we are. Asher, I think we're good here, man. I think you're right on Draymond. I think it'll be great to watch Jamal Murray next year. I think it'll be great to see where Denver ends up. If they've got like another trade in them, maybe if it's not just the Russell Westbrook plan. Have you had fun? Did you feel swayed at all by any of my points? You don't have to be gracious. You can happily just come on and say, no, I think you talked rubbish for the last 90 minutes.
Swayed in some ways for certain conversations, yes. I think with specifically the Nuggets stuff, I think no, but that's also because my entire half of my entire job is consuming the Nuggets, and like I feel like I'm pretty the autism I am right here kicks in for the Nuggets.
Fair enough.
But I think not that I'm necessarily swayed per se, but I do think I at the very least understand why we disagree on certain things. I think at that point it just comes down to a difference in philosophy. And I think that's one of the more interesting things about basketball is how different people think. And that's what makes discourse good, is because different people think differently. So not everyone thinks the same.
So do you reckon in 10 years time when we're running, I'm running whatever the Seattle team, the expansion team is, and you're running the Vegas team.
Yeah.
This is when we really get to see the philosophies play out.
This is where
we'll get to figure out who knows more ball for sure.
Yeah, I think we'll see my team win about 72 games, win the title, and I think you'll win about 13 games. And
13. You're not even going to give me like Brandon Ingram primary, like 42, just above 500. I thought that there was at least going to be a floor jab in there. The Detroit Pistons were 14 68.
I know, that was my bar. That was the
nice.
No.
Nice. All right,
I think
guys.
No. I think you, with your philosophy, will have a very respectable 35 win roster with Brandon Ingram as a primary.
Nice. We shall see. Guys, that has been a podcast with Asher Levy NBA. I'm sure he's going to be back on. No, if he will come back on, I would happily have him back on. And we'll just trash the Nuggets for 90 minutes to try and claw something back. I've had a lot of fun today. Make sure to check the links out for Asher's YouTube. Asher's just gone past the 1,000 subscriber mark. Just got monetized. So if you go and watch his videos, he's making money. And that's really nice. That is a nice, actionable way that you can support NBA content creators. Go and check them out. He's done some really good stuff around the draft. Great Reed Shepherd video. I think a Wizards video that I watched as well. I'm a big fan of his work. I'm not a big fan of how he's torn me to shreds on this podcast today, but that shouldn't prevent you from going to check him out.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, man. I had a lot of time. A lot of fun.
Good. Yeah. I'm glad. Guys, tune back in next week for another episode of The Drop Step. I don't know what we have coming. I think I'm going to get in the fetal position for a bit. Enjoy Summer League.